And it's not just big countries who will benefit if there is no order. I would argue that any country which will take risks, which will have extreme positions, which would, test the system, will actually use disorder to its advantage. I mean, we've seen in our own neighborhood, you don't have to be a big country to be a risky country. I have some smaller neighbors who've done a pretty good job at that. So, first of all, I think we should all, understand the importance of an order. Now, the old order, it was an order. It was a product of its times. But why I felt that its virtues were exaggerated was, I think the rule maker and the rule taker had somewhat different perspectives, because I also said in the same interview, if you were at the receiving end of some of those rules or the application of those rules, we had issues. And let me give you 2 or 3 practical examples. If you capriciously, if it suits your interest, somebody is good, not good, well, I'll make up my mind how they're going to do, and you apply that order to the same country on the same issues differently. Take Afghanistan, okay? So the same Afghanistan, the same Taliban, which was an outlier, was welcomed in the Doha process, was welcomed in Oslo. Apparently at that time people were okay with it. Today again we are going back saying, Taliban is doing all these not so good things. Now, if they were doing all of that, what was discussed in Oslo and Doha? You had a British general who described them at that time as, they are country boys with their own honor code. Now, so when it suits you to deal with the Taliban, they are okay. When it is not, they are not okay. You are an extremist today, you wear a suit and tie, you are okay. I think I have a problem with that order. Let's give you a second example. We all speak of sovereignty and territorial integrity. All of us agree. It's a vital principle. It's the bedrock of global rules. After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. So, pardon me, I have some question marks on that whole order. Now, I can give you many more. We speak today of political interference. When the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention. So I think we need, if to have an order, there must be fairness. I agree with you, Dominic, we need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN. A strong, a global order must have some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no-no. We have them even more regularly to the west, where. They seem to be okay. So I think it's important to audit the working of the world for the last 8 decades and be honest about it, and to understand today that, the balances, the shareholdings in the world have changed. We need a different conversation. We need, frankly, in that sense, a different order.
I move now to Dubai Abul Hol. The order-disorder dialectic is perhaps historically most keenly felt or pronounced in your part of the world, the Middle East. You represent an Arab voice, a West Asian voice on the panel. 100 years ago, Western powers began building peace, between double quotes, in the Middle East. They failed spectacularly. They're still failing. Now we have the paradox of an Arab country hosting and brokering peace between two warring European nations. How can we, and I purposefully use we here, do it better?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you all here today. And I have to say, hearing the sentence, 100 years ago, Western powers sought to bring peace to the Middle East sounds eerily similar to what we're hearing today in the news. But the difference is, I would say, 100 years ago, what Western powers actually did in the region was not bring peace. It was enforcing colonial imposition, arbitrary borders, and governance models that were frankly parachuted into the region. They were not built by the region. And so what we see today is the result of it being not peace, but fragility. And it's a legacy of externally dictated arrangements that often ignored the political, social, and perhaps more importantly, economic realities of the region. But the paradox you mentioned is indeed striking. An Arab country and a Gulf country today is, in fact, attempting to broker peace between warring European nation. But this reversal, I believe, underscores a very fundamental shift that's happening in our part of the world that's not getting enough attention. And it is that Arab Gulf countries in particular will no longer just be passive subjects of a new international order. They're actually quite active shapers of it. And this changes the dynamic in a way that I think requires us to approach the question of how can we, and I think we here, I can broadly say Arab states, but also global South-South cooperation more broadly, how we can do it better is as follows. One, sustainable peace cannot be imposed. It has to be facilitated. And I think that's the key thing that would be a difference from traditionally Western imposed peace-building processes, is there's no legacy of sort of neo-colonial objectives. There's no sense of trying to have a one-size-fits-all model on how peace should and should not look like. And there's a certain legitimacy.
All right, so External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was speaking at the Raisina Dialogue on the topic Thrones and Thorns, defending the integrity of nations. He spoke on sovereignty, territorial integrity, and why we need a strong and fair UN. Also said that we need an international order. Old international order was the full realities, and basic consistency of rules is the need of the hour. And in a short while from now, the visiting US intelligence chief Tulsi Gabbard will also deliver a keynote address at the Raisina Dialogue. And earlier, on day one, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar met many of his counterparts on the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue. He ended the day with holding a warm meeting with Bhutanese Foreign Minister Day and Dhungyal. Both the leaders reaffirmed commitment to further unique and long-standing ties. And Dr. Jaishankar also met Tulsi Gabbard. Two leaders held useful exchange on contemporary global and regional security challenges. India's External Affairs Minister also held a good meeting with his Ghana counterpart Sam Okudzeto Ablakwa. Two leaders explored opportunities to further development partnership and South-South cooperation. And Ganbold Dambazav is Mongolian ambassador to India, participating in the Raisina Dialogue as one of its participants. DD India's Akhilesh Suman talked exclusively with him on how Raisina would be helpful in extending the positive dialogue process amidst the ongoing conflicts.
Raisina Dialogue is being participated by many ambassadors, many statisticians, many academicians. And here with me is Gambo Dambazav, the ambassador of Mongolia to India. Ambassador,
good evening.
How do you feel about this Raisina Dialogue? How do you get it?
Yes, I believe and I trust that Raisina is a very important platform, gives us good opportunity to meet, discuss, to hear others, what they're thinking, listen to them, and of course deliver our position. And I'm, as ambassador of Mongolia to India, participating. This is my fourth Raisina Dialogue. And we bring every year, we bring in our delegation, we bring in our minister states, and this year our state secretaries are participating, and we feel that it gives us a big, good platform for us to deliver our voice to the world.
Okay, so how do you feel India's effort, how it will contribute in bringing peace to the ongoing conflicts in the world?
Oh yes, we believe that India is doing a very great job, and we hope that the future of the world will, in certain point, will depend on India and its policy, on its the religion, its the philosophy, one world, one family, one future. So it gives us very good opportunity to hear how the India pursuing it, and personally I believe that India will continue to play its crucial role for the bringing the world peace in all the region.
Okay. Ambassador, how India-Mongolia relations are going on?
Historically, our two countries have long 1,000 years history. As of today, we consider India as one of the most important third neighbor of Mongolia, and now we enjoy the strategic partnership. And this year, we are commemorating 70 years of establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and India. So it is a very good historic year for us.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for talking to DD India and DD News. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And United Kingdom MP Lord Karan Bilimoria hailed the renewed India-UK free trade agreement negotiations. Speaking to DD India's Amritpal Singh, he hoped for early conclusion of the FTA.
I have with me Lord Karan Bilimoria, who is a Member of Parliament of the United Kingdom, is here in New Delhi to participate in the Raisina Dialogue. Lord Bilimoria, many thanks for speaking to DD India. Where do you see the India-UK negotiations on FTA going?
India is only the 12th largest trading partner of the UK. It should be one of the top 3. So what I say is this: sign the FTA. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, I implore both Prime Ministers to sign the FTA. When that's signed, we will see a turbocharging of trade, business and investment between our countries. And I want to see that trade of $50 billion double to $100 billion.
But do you think that the political leadership, the present political leadership of both countries has put enough political weight behind the FTA?
Very much so. The business secretary from the UK was here shortly. Minister Piyush Goyal has been personally involved in negotiations. Both sides want to do it. The Foreign Secretary and Foreign Minister, we call a Foreign Secretary, your Foreign Minister, Jaishankar, Dr. Jaishankar, when he was in England, said very clearly it's soon that the FTA will be signed. So the intention is there on both sides to get it done. We just need to get it done.
All right. You mentioned Dr. Jaishankar was there in the United Kingdom. One concern that India has, during his visit, we saw, Khalistani separatists trying to launch an attack on that. We've seen that on the Indian High Commission there. The increasing radicalization and the space that the West gives to, characters like these is a matter of concern for India.
Let's look at the attack on the Indian High Commission that happened some time ago. Completely unacceptable. The whole of the UK was saying this is not right, this should never have happened. Lessons have been learnt. Let's put it in the context of the nearly 2 million people of Indian origin like me who live and work in the UK. We are the largest ethnic minority population in the UK, but more importantly, we are the most successful in every field, whether you look at business, whether you look at politics, whether you look at every aspect of life. The Indian community is reaching the very top. And the vast, vast majority of Indians in the UK love India, proud of India.
Lord Bilimoria, many thanks for speaking to us. So clearly, the role of the Indian diaspora in, furthering the relations between the two countries, the United Kingdom and India, is central to this relationship. And as the Member of Parliament from the United Kingdom was saying, that these incidents are far and few between, but they do not mar the relationship that is strong. Amritpal Singh for DD India in New Delhi.
All right, we are slipping into a very short break. On the other side, more stories. Keep watching DD India Live.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. US President Donald Trump set to hold talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over phone and said many elements of a peace agreement in Ukraine have been agreed. Trump said he would speak to Russia's Putin on Tuesday morning about ending the Ukraine conflict with territorial concessions by Kiev and control of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Trump has been trying to win Putin's support for a 30-day ceasefire proposal that Ukraine accepted last week. As both sides traded heavy aerial strikes early on Monday and Russia moved closer to ejecting Ukrainian forces from their months-old foothold in the western Russia region of Kursk. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told a regular briefing on Monday that Trump and Putin would discuss a power plant on the border of Russia and Ukraine.
Power plant that is on the border of Russia and Ukraine that was up for discussion with the Ukrainians, and he will address it in his call with Putin tomorrow. The nuclear plant.
And next in line on meeting Trump would be Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, who is expected to visit the United States soon as trade tensions soar between the world's two largest economies over Trump's tariffs. Speaking to reporters while talking about the Chinese leader, he said, and I quote him here, he'll be coming in the not too distant future. However, Trump did not give any further details. According to media reports, Washington and Beijing had begun discussions about a possible summit in June in the United States. Since returning to the White House in January, Trump has unleashed tariffs on major trading partners, including China, citing trade imbalances and the failure to stem the flow of deadly fentanyl. He earlier this month raised a 10% blanket tariff he previously imposed on Chinese products to 20%. Lebanese and Syrian defense officials have reached an agreement for a ceasefire to halt 2 days of clashes along the border. The Lebanese and Syrian defense ministries said in statements on Monday that 3 soldiers in Syria's new army and 7 Lebanese were killed in border clashes during the past 2 days. On the Lebanese side, 52 people were wounded, the health ministry said. The Lebanese and Syrian defense ministers also agreed on continuing contacts between the army intelligence directorates to prevent more deterioration on the border. Meanwhile, Lebanon's foreign affairs minister Youssef Raji met his Syrian counterpart Asad al-Shibani in Brussels to discuss the cross-border developments and agreed to maintain contacts. Late on Sunday, Syria's defense ministry accused Hezbollah of crossing into Syrian territory and kidnapping and killing the 3 members of Syria's new army. Hezbollah denied any involvement. And the European Union led the way as donors on Monday pledged 5.8 billion euros in aid for Syria at a conference in Brussels. However, donation was down on the 7.5 billion promised overall at the conference last year. EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean Dubravka Suica said that this money should be used for early recovery for the benefit of all Syrian citizens. The conference, 9th Brussels conference, standing with Syria, meeting the needs for a successful transition, aimed at mobilizing international support for an inclusive, peaceful transition and generate pledges for humanitarian and non-humanitarian assistance.
Just closed Syrian pledging conference. This was 9th conference in a row. It was very successful. We pledged a lot of money. Better to say it is 5.8 billion euro, out of which there is 4.2 in grants and only 1.6 in loans. I think this is good for the recovery, for the early recovery of Syria. And I also hope that Syrian authorities, who were represented by their Minister of Foreign Affairs, can be satisfied, and this money could and should be used for their early recovery and for the benefit of all Syrian citizens.
Now, Pentagon said on Monday that there have been dozens of military casualties so far in Yemen. U.S. Defense Department spokesman Sean Parnell says the U.S. military will carry out unrelenting strikes against Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels until achieving its objective. Responding to the Houthi movement's threats to international shipping, the U.S. launched a new wave of airstrikes on Saturday.
The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the President's objectives.
And US President Donald Trump declared Monday he will hold Iran directly responsible for any future attacks by Yemen's Tehran-backed Houthi rebels who have targeted US and other foreign ships in the Red Sea. Trump said that every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences. Now, a US federal judge on Monday pressed the Trump administration to provide details about hundreds of Venezuelans it deported despite a court order barring it from doing so. It gave the government until Tuesday to explain why officials believed they had complied with his order. The American Civil Liberties Union attorney Lee Gallerant said that after a hearing before US District Judge James Boasberg, the group remained convinced that the government had acted unlawfully. All right, we are cutting live to the Raisina Dialogue again.
First of all, the Global South, the decolonization, because it is impossible to appreciate India's global positions without being cognizant of the colonial history. Because when you have lost your independence and struggle to recover it, there is a whole mindset which comes with it. So I would say very definitely Global South is one. Two, democratic. Our choice in the 1940s to become a modern democratic polity, I argue we draw on our own traditions in that regard. To be a democratic polity, to be a market economy, to be a society which respects faiths, I think this is also a very important part of our DNA. Sometimes even we in India take it a bit for granted, but many of our positions take this into account. Third, I would argue that in a way we have navigated, adapted to a world which has not always been kind to us, which has not always been accommodating at us. But we have, in that sense, developed a certain skill of which you make some reference, but a way of really, I would call it both a tactical skill but a long view. That we have not a 5-year, 10-year necessarily horizon and understanding of ourselves. And for today, as the most populous country in the world, as the 5th largest economy of the world, perhaps 3rd by the end of this decade, in various other domains you can see, we are doing more, we are contributing more. I think the idea of a multipolar world, and where India itself is concerned, to think of how to become a leading power at some point of time. I think these are the Global South character, the democratic character, the adapting long view aspect, and a multipolar world towards which we are working. I think if you keep these in mind, a lot of what we do in different situations would make sense. Now, you put your question in a certain way. I understand why you want to elicit a certain reply from me, but I want you to think back, because you began by saying 23, 24, 25, how has it changed? I would argue many of the positions we took in 23 and 24 on this very platform, which at that time were not necessarily liked, today have stood the test of time.
True. Dubai Abul Hol, I'd like to take that same point about taking the long view to your part of the world. Sitting at conferences like this one, discussing sovereignty, territorial integrity, agency of domestic decision making, all of this sounds almost theoretical if you consider Syria or Lebanon. The best antidote, and I guess India is one example of this, is state formation, robust state formation. Shouldn't the Arab world also look inwards?
I think, frankly, from a distance, it might look like territorial integrity and sovereignty seem like theoretical debates when it comes to states like Syria and Lebanon. But we cannot brush over the fact that state institutions and many...
All right, so External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was speaking at the Raisina Dialogue on the topic Thrones and Thorns, defending the integrity of nations. He spoke on the multipolar world and said that it is impossible to understand India's position without understanding impact of colonialism. And this was the gist of what he said, and we'll keep getting you live visuals from the Raisina Dialogue. Thanks for the time being. Namaskar.